kind of diving into this. I know we've like talked about having this conversation for a long time,
Yeah.
but excited to be able to finally sit down and chat. Diving back into the coffee world is something I've wanted to do for a long time. And this topic is something that I know is both near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
So, for those of you listening, sitting here with Hans, owner of Florin Coffee, um, today I kind of want to dive into what is it like from like production, like bean to cup, like the coffee industry comes under a lot of fire for being this like pretentious thing and like a little bit too overpriced,
Yeah.
but like there's a lot of labor that goes into coffee. So
Yeah.
the
Totally.
floor is yours.
I mean, where do we start? It's
Yeah.
like you start from the beginning. It's a plant, grows from a seed, not generally in the US. There's some places, obviously. That's where we're at, is in the US. It's like, I don't know if this is true, but it has to be one. I mean, it's definitely the most hand produced uh, resources that we have. I would call it a resource. I think
Yeah.
it's a resource, natural resource. Um, but yeah, it's like it's got to grow in the ground. It's got to be nurtured from this like tiny baby and all in these really small plants, whatever. And they're then planted and then takes like 3 to 4 years before they even produce fruit. Um, yeah, I think that if people had a better idea of what went into it, they'd be okay with spending more than $1.50 on a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So like how long, like, we all think of plants and it's like,
Yeah.
you've grown flowers at home or maybe you started a little bed and grown your own tomatoes, but
Yeah.
like how long does it take before a coffee tree grows to maturity where you can actually like start getting a harvest from it?
Like to produce like a consistent crop, it's like
Yeah.
4 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So if
That's
you
like,
had to plant tomatoes
Yeah.
for 4 years from now, like nobody would do it.
oh, 100%.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's like, man, that kind of puts everything into a little bit more perspective because it's like, oh, like if I want to, harvest for, let's see, we're in 2024. So like
Yeah.
you literally would be like planting for the next election cycle to
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if you planted a tree today.
Exactly.
And like, so that kind of a lead time, that kind of puts into more perspective, like, crop rust, like
Yeah.
all of these like diseases that are currently plaguing the coffee world,
Yeah.
like that becomes detrimental because you can't just go in overnight and
Yeah. It's
replace
like,
it.
yeah. If you have a disease issue or whatever, you're like, okay, I need to plant more trees, but you're not going to harvest those for years. It's like you have to,
Yeah.
it's it's wild that it takes that long. And then also like if you're a new farmer, like, so you want to get into being a coffee farmer,
Yeah.
what kind of business can you do where you're like planning 4 years out before you have anything that you can offer?
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. That's bananas.
I don't know any business that I would want to start up
No.
that does that. Like,
Yeah.
no.
And then like, oh, the product that you're selling is people are trying to buy it for the cheapest amount possible. And
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, there's like a ton of steps. I mean, obviously, so you have those 4 years where it's growing. Maybe you can get it in the third year. Sometimes you'll get like sparse pickings that way.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so like producing fruit but all that fruit, each cherry has to be picked by hand in 99% of the situations. It's all done by hand. It's on the side of mountains. Like I have been on a few coffee farms where it's like I can't walk up the side of the hill on my own, let alone carrying like a basket or like 100-pound sack on my head or whatever. It's crazy.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience going to these coffee farms. Like, I know that's like not necessarily a once in a lifetime opportunity, but it's like a pretty cool thing to get to see it. Like,
it's
how
a
did your like
changing opportunity for sure. Like if you're in coffee and you have the desire to go, well, first, I think you should have the desire to go. I think everyone should visit. I don't know. It's like it's like in where we're at. Like you should go, if you can, go visit a farm where your food comes from. You'll be like, oh, I see why we need more regenerative farming. Like,
Yes,
if you
100%.
see those contrasts, like, yeah, do that. So obviously that's a good experience. If you're in coffee, to be able to like tell that story or like have more than just like book knowledge of it, it's It'll change you inside and like really make you appreciate what you're drinking. Maybe you're not wasting as much coffee when you're on bar serving it, or you just
Yeah.
have like a little more understanding of like all that goes into it.
Yeah.
And I think it broadens the whole coffee scene to like we get so focused in on from like green to finished product. That's only a small portion of the whole situation. So if you like have a better understanding of that whole thing, it means a lot more. What you're producing is affecting families all over. And like
Yeah.
for me, I want to give the most care to that. I want to like respect that and like make it taste as good as we can. Not just for us, because obviously our customers, we want to give them our best product, but also it's like if I'm just putting it in the machine and turning it brown, and some people have like poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this, like I don't know, feels kind of
Disrespectful.
yeah, a little bit. I don't know.
It's like you want to represent like all of the hard work that went into it, like right before it got to where you are.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
realizing that like this final step of like serving and roasting, serving and delivering is the thing that is like the presentation of it, but
Yeah.
it's only like the final wrap in the bow on like
Mhm.
coffee as a whole.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, fair enough. That is our business. That's
Yeah.
what we do. So like the majority of our mindset is going to be there. But I think having experience on coffee farms it just puts it into perspective. It makes your job less important, or that like I think you used the word what was it? Of the barista, the like the pretentiousness.
Yeah.
That's the word. I was
Yeah.
looking for. I think it takes that pretentiousness, and it like you can't be pretentious when you realize the global scene of coffee. It's like you're just a small part.
Exactly.
I don't-
It's like once you realize that it's like you're, let's call it the four hands that touch the coffee from, importing it to roasting it to, brewing it to serving it, assuming that's all four different people. That's like four of the like hundreds of hands that have touched it from picking it on the farm to taking it to the processing facility to all these places.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
kind of humbling.
It is. Yeah. It's like you got this cherry. Okay. So you have people who are picking the cherry off the tree, and they do that during harvest. They'll do that usually every day. Not on the same plants, but and they'll like move their way through the farm. And generally they'll go through like 2 or 3 times because some cherries won't be ripe at the same time as others.
Okay,
So you're trying to only pick the ripe cherries. But you're also getting paid by how much you pick. So
That's crazy.
yeah, so it's like farmers who want a better sorting when it's still on the tree will have to pay their farmers more, the pickers more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're like going through the farm maybe 2 or 3 times to like get the ones that are red, assuming that it's a red varietal.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then they'll like go back through as the green has become more ripe. And then, so they're doing that every day. They're picking it. Then they have to take the cherry and take it either to, if it's like in a farm, like an estate where it's a single milling situation there, they'll either, depending how big the farm is, have these bags that they've picked. And at the end of the day, someone will come around and pick them up in a truck, and they'll take them to the mill, and they'll measure them out and like see how much you picked, and you get paid on that. But then you'll also get paid on like how clean it is. So if you're just stripping the bushes and picking everything, it's like, depending on the farm, depending what the quality that they expect is, like you won't get paid as much, or they may not have you back or whatever.
It's kind of also like you know, just as with everything, in life, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you want to have a farmer that is willing to just hire people and they just go through and indiscriminately pick whatever cherries off the tree, it might take a little bit of extra work to sort through and, make sure you still get a good crop picking, but then also, they're selling that other lower quality side of that.
Yeah.
And that's where, you might get your, $1.50 Folgers, that goes to wherever where maybe the quality doesn't matter. But if you want to have that like really great experience that we all have come to know and love now in the modern world of coffee, that's going to take a lot of effort at every step of the way.
Yes, exactly. There's so much attention to detail. And most of it is done in like pretty what we would say is rudimentary ways. Like, it's a visual thing. It's like, oh, is this cherry red enough? Is it like too green? Is it overripe? And then like even the sorting and stuff is like, they're dumping it into like a quintales, like a measured box.
Yeah.
Like dump your bag in there and they flip it over and it drops down into the tank. And you just do that to like, that's how you measure how much you got. It's like a lot of
crazy.
Yeah.
That's cool
like,
though.
Yeah. And here we are using like computer software and all these like automatic weighing machines and whatever. And we think we're the shit. Like, I don't know. We think we got it going on. And it's like, we're blessed because we have those opportunities.
Yeah.
But again, it's a much larger picture. And I think that's like what I'm trying to get across is like, I don't know.
We're a small piece of that puzzle. And it's like we're blessed to have that technology and all that, but that doesn't necessarily make our part of the puzzle any more important because like you could do your job without, them supplying the like starting product.
Yes. Yeah.
How long have you been roasting coffee for?
That's a good question. Probably off and on for 16 years, 17 years, something like that.
That's such a long time.
Yeah. I'm like an old man now, so that I haven't done anything for that long, basically. I've been an adult for about that long.
Yep.
But yeah, that was like, there was stretches in there where I wasn't. For a couple of years at a time, I was like a barista.
Okay.
Doing that, but in coffee, like
still staying in the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What like initially got you like interested in like the roasting process versus like serving? I mean, from my experience, it was like really cool. I like had like a blip in time where I was like, oh, I want to learn how to roast coffee because that's the next logical step.
Right.
And then I, start sitting down and I think, I've met with you a couple times, and it's like, oh yeah, this is way over my head. Like I love it, but like slightly too complicated.
Yeah. I don't remember how I first started, like, or like had that inkling. There was a guy in the town that I grew up in who had like a small, it was like a 5-pound roaster.
Okay.
And they were good, like family friends. And so I think I remember seeing that when I was like, maybe like 12 or 13, something like that.
Yeah.
And then during early internet days of like forums and stuff like that, I tend to go down rabbit holes. And so I would just like, I heard somebody had been roasting coffee in a popcorn popper, and I was like,
oh, okay,
that's kind of cool. I think I could get some green coffee from this guy or like find some somewhere. And so I like found a popcorn popper at the thrift store, and it wasn't the right one because there's like different styles. Yeah, exactly. This one had the screen on the bottom, which doesn't get as much agitation. So you would have like scorching on some stuff. And well, then I found the one with the slide vents that get a little bit more rotation. And and I just like, I don't really know why that stuck with me. I liked coffee. I drank coffee since I was, a young teen.
Yeah.
And didn't really know what else I was going to do with my life. I wasn't trying to go to college, which...
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just how it was. And so then when I wanted to take it more seriously, I heard about a guy who had a roasting company, kind of like similar circles. And so I reached out to him. I was like, hey, do you have any do you want like an intern or like an apprentice or whatever? And he was like, he was growing somewhat, and that was like a side gig for him at the time.
Yeah.
And he was like, I would love to teach you how to roast, and you could take over some production. So I was living in Iowa at the time.
Okay.
Moved out here to Ohio. And like started roasting for him, lived above the coffee shop and the roastery.
Sounds like the dream for young
It
single guy.
was, it was awesome. I was like, this is, I'm set for life. I'm roasting coffee, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and like before that, there was not many shops, at least not that I had been to. There was some people doing like better coffee than others, or like trying, which is
Yeah.
like what this company was doing as well. Um, and yeah, so I ended up, when I moved out here, I met the daughter of this guy who had the coffee roasting company. We started hanging out. We ended up getting married. So
Wonderful.
I got more than just coffee roasting experience, which I'm grateful for. Um, yeah, and then worked there for a while, and then worked at another shop in Columbus here for a while. Started their roasting program, and then it was time to venture out on our own.
Nice.
Yeah, so we've been doing it for 7 years now. We've been roasting on our own. Shop's
That's
been
awesome.
open for 4. So
That's pretty great.
yeah, sometimes I wonder what if I went and did something else, but
Yeah.
I love it. I love
It-
coffee. It's
yeah.
like
You went for it. It was
Yeah.
like a passion.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else really.
yeah.
Yeah, I still like rabbit holes, and I will go on rabbit holes and get distracted from what I should be doing. But
That's pretty great.
Whatever.
What is like like quick side rabbit hole
Yeah.
tangent? What is like a rabbit hole you've been like diving into?
oh man, it varies from month to month. Right now, I've been I had some old film cameras
Okay. Fun.
that I like used when I was a teenager,
Yeah.
and I've got those out in the last few years. I shot some a couple years ago, and I've like got a lot more into that again.
It's a lot of fun.
It is.
It's a dangerous hobby. Film is very expensive.
Yeah, it is. But then it's like, well, you got to start developing your own. So that's where I'm at right now. Is like, should I? No.
So we're gonna have the Florin Film Lab opening up in the
Yeah,
back.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's sweet.
Trying to think of anything else. That's the main
So
thing. Yeah.
to make sure that we don't miss it,
Yeah.
I think so. One of the biggest things I wanted to get out of this conversation is if someone is going into a coffee shop and they're looking at, they're staring at the menu, and I think you guys are like pretty great about talking about like market price and stuff for like pour overs and coffee, and you guys have a wonderful selection of roasted coffee and kind of like breaking down the like different price points. And I think it was like last year or 2 years ago, I remember you did like a really, really great coffee. I'm forgetting what it was, but I remember getting like a half size bag that was like the same price as everything else, but it was like, something really special. I could be completely missing
I
it,
think
but
you're
like,
right. I think it was a Gesha, maybe. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
but it's like cool to be able to like have that level of transparency for people. Can you break down, like if someone's looking at a cup of coffee and they're like, oh my gosh, like $7 for a cup, like you don't have to get into like specifics if you don't want to,
Yeah,
but like
okay.
what is the like rough cost that people should look at, in terms of how you come to that conclusion is like, oh, this is going to cost $7 versus we can charge, $5 for this other one, or, this one's $3.
Right.
Like how does that
Yeah.
kind of break down?
Yeah, I mean, generally, if we have different price cups of coffee, it's all just based on what we paid for the green coffee.
Yes.
So, I mean, as everything in the world, coffee has gone up a lot. Like right
Yeah.
now, I mean, it's come down a little bit, but right now we're paying not quite double what we were before 2020, but like pretty close.
Dang.
but-
That's a lot of,
Obviously, our prices haven't doubled. I mean,
Yeah.
we're still charging $2.50 for a cup of coffee in our shop,
pretty
which is like,
impressive.
we can do that because we are a roastery and a coffee shop. I want people to drink our coffee, and like if that's a gateway in, I don't know, I think
Yeah.
in professional terms they call that like a loss leader of
Yeah,
some sort,
yeah.
whatever. I don't know, I'm not a professional. But yeah, it's like we basically we'll just take a percentage. We'll like calculate like what we pay for the green coffee. Obviously, transport has gone up way higher than it used to be. We're paying more than double for shipping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah,
those are the things that I feel like nobody really gets when it comes to like, they just see like a cost. And so, like we all know it's like chances are probably going to be like someone's grandpa coming in and they're like, oh, why is the cost of coffee gone up so much?
Yeah.
But it's like, in the reality is like, in the past 4 years, your input costs have doubled in every single sector that they could have doubled in.
Yeah.
And you're still able to somehow make that like, you know, 250 cup of coffee work.
Right.
Because like for you, it's like understanding it's about the experience.
Yeah.
And like, you're able to still charge the appropriate amount for, roasted coffee.
Yeah. It is a weird thing because I feel like kind of sometimes I get on a tangent of like, why can't we just charge what it costs
Yes.
and like maintain our margin because this is what we need to live and to survive?
Yeah.
But the reality is there's a lot of ebb and flow in the prices that we pay. We try to put it kind of like an average so that we're making money, more
Yeah.
money sometimes and less sometimes. But like if we did like other industries, coffee would be, people wouldn't know what to do. If we were like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, I need to have 200% markup on this. Like,
Yep.
no one's going to come buy your coffee,
Yep.
which is like kind of infuriating. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know why people want, I should be clear that it has changed a lot in the last, I would say 6 or 7 years. Like there's a lot more awareness. People have tried good coffee and they're like, oh, this is actually better.
Yeah.
There's like a thing with, I don't know, like whiskey or wine or whatever. And it's like there's definitely a difference between like the bottom of the barrel. Actually, I don't know if that may be a whiskey term.
Yeah.
But like when you get up into like good whiskey or good wine, like the level that it changes is not linked with the price.
Yeah,
that you're
exactly.
charging. Yeah. But like people are trying better coffee and they're like, oh, okay, I don't want to go drink Speedway coffee anymore.
Correct.
But yeah, that's like a fight I have in my mind all the time is like, should we charge what this costs? Like, but I feel guilty or like I don't want people to feel that like weird tension.
You don't want to like have people come in one day and go, oh, coffee's $12.50 today because our importer coffee would be fluctuating at the speed of gas prices if that was like how we were doing it. Because plot twist, like you need gas to get coffee to where we need to go.
Exactly. Yes.
And so if we were working based on that, it's like people wouldn't be able to build a schedule and like a habit around dare I say a ritual around their coffee.
Yes.
If it's constantly fluctuating like that. So I think it's like kind of cool to be able to have that level of stability for people when it comes to their morning routine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely is kind of a hard thing because at the end of the day, like that for you as a business owner is something where you're like, okay, we gotta take a little bit of a loss on this, but it like allows us to show that we're thinking about the community. You've got the people first, and so that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know. If you want to make a lot of money, don't get into coffee. But also, like, life isn't all about making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, if you can, I don't know, it's the community that gathers around it. Being a part of that is worth a lot.
Exactly.
It's not monetarily, but like, it's worth a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
And not obviously we're not like losing money to do just to have that community. It has to be sustainable for us and for the people down the line or at the beginning of the line. And that's like a balance of like, do we go just cherry pick, so to speak, all of those like really nice coffees that we're paying $20 a pound for? Like, no, that's not really our model. And it can be for some people, and that's great. But I would rather people drink good coffee and that's not way overpriced and be able to have it every day.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like our sweet spot.
It's pretty great. You have like a floor for your standards.
Yes.
But you're like not trying to like, get everything at that like, 100-point coffee because that's just going to be unsustainable and alienate the majority of, a clientele. So I love that.
Yeah. And there's definitely room for that Speedway coffee. Like there's so many people that drink that. And like, I think that could become obviously a lot more sustainable. It's it's generally linked to like not great sourcing practices.
Yep.
Like it's all the cheapest commodity like that you can get. So that goes down the line. That's like generally how those pickers were paid, how those farmers' lives are, how they're like all of the milling is like not sorted well. It's like not that care. But those people also grow coffee, and like to say all of those people should start growing 90-point coffee is insane. Like
Yeah.
then that would it's not possible, but that would just dilute the whole like not everyone can grow the best coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
Yeah.
There needs to be that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know
That's
if
cool.
that like lays out some of the steps, but like I mean we can just go through like what it I don't know what it takes from or what the steps are from basically picking
Yeah.
the cherry, taking it to the mill. Usually that's like either a co-op that they're dropping the cherries off, or if it's an estate, it's like a single mill that the farm would have on it. Those cherries get put into a mill that basically, if it's a washed coffee, takes the cherry off of the seed, which is our coffee bean.
Yeah.
So it separates that, depulps it. That coffee, those seeds then go into generally a big tank, a vat full of water where there's some fermentation. Usually can be anywhere from like 12 to 48 hours to create a reaction to get this like slippery mucilage stuff off of it. So there's
Okay.
people there
Yeah.
that are tending that.
Yep.
They're checking it all the time to make sure that it doesn't get over fermented, but that they can get that mucilage off. From there, they will rinse the coffee a bunch of times to like separate the mucilage from the actual seed, and then it goes to drying. So it's some places will have a mechanical dryer, which is like a giant drum, basically like a big
Yeah.
dryer, like
That's crazy.
yeah, clothes
That's kinda
dryer,
cool.
but that's like the size of this building.
Yeah. That's
But
pretty big.
yeah, but generally, they'll either spread that coffee out on like patios, most likely concrete. Sometimes they'll build these raised beds that have like fabric that it
Yeah.
can breathe on.
Gets
But
like
they're
more
there.
aeration.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to dry it too quickly, and you don't want to let it be wet for too long. So you need to find that like happy medium. But that requires like rotating the coffee all the time. So there's people there who are like going through and like flipping the coffee over all the time.
Yeah.
I can't think off the top of my head how often they're doing it, but several times a day they're flipping this coffee to get the right moisture content so that it doesn't start to mold.
Yeah.
And then from there, it goes to a place where it's getting sorted, generally by hand. So there'll be like a conveyor belt with a whole bunch of people on there just like picking defects,
Like,
out, picking rocks.
One bean
Yeah.
at a time.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean,
I've dropped green coffee into roasted coffee in the cooler, and that's 20 pounds.
yeah.
And trying to sort the green coffee from the roasted coffee, which is obvious. One is
yeah.
brown, one is green.
Yep.
It will make your eyes go crazy. It's like,
That's absolutely insane. That's like, I mean, now I feel like I want to like count it out so I can have this accurate number. And if I did, I'll put it up on the screen there.
Yes.
But like, there's got to be like hundreds of coffee beans just in one cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't imagine having to sort that for one cup of coffee, let alone, 50-kilo bag. Like, that's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. And then, it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. All of the like hand steps to produce the best cup possible. They're like, that's possible from the crop that they have.
Yeah. So what would like, I know there's like the different like processing of coffees, like natural versus washed. Like I honestly like, I know like a little bit about it, but like what would be like the biggest like differences or benefits to one versus another, especially when it comes to someone who wants to like brew this coffee at home?
I mean, the finished product on a wash versus a natural coffee, generally a natural will have a lot more like fruitiness to it.
Okay.
If you think of like a blueberry, like the pulp of a blueberry or raspberry or whatever like that, it's got a lot more of that like funkiness to it because they rather than at the beginning stage milling off separating the pulp from the seed itself, they leave that all together and they'll dry it that way.
Okay.
It's a lot
pretty cool.
easier for it to get fermenty tasting and like
Yeah.
funky because there's that extra fruit on there that can just
Yeah.
if it can over ferment really easily. So if you taste like a really funky, like the ferment is like a I don't know if there's any other product like that would taste like that. Definitely
Yeah.
just like a bad wine, like a
Like probably
really
like an apple cider vinegar or something like
yeah,
that.
it can definitely get that vinegar taste to it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So in the drying phase, it's a little bit more finicky.
Okay.
It needs to be turned more often.
Yeah.
It takes less water, which is great. So that's like how originally, like I think Ethiopia has like the claim to starting natural coffees, kind
Yeah.
of, but it was just based on resources, not having access to water. So you pick this coffee and then you're able to dry it. Um,
It's pretty great.
yeah, it's
like
pretty cool.
being resourceful and like
Yeah.
figuring it out.
Yeah, and now people are doing all sorts of things with like the different processing of like anaerobic and all this
Yeah.
wild. They're adding certain yeasts to like enclosed containers to try and create a certain outcome that the like through fermentation, which
That's pretty wild.
it is wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool people are trying that and like I don't know. I'm a bit of an old soul and I just kind of like the original. Like
Yeah,
I'll just take like a natural or
Yeah.
a wash coffee and yeah, I don't know.
You get like a really good natural coffee and it's life changing.
It is.
I think
It's
we all have that like natural Ethiopian experience. I like still remember like going through, the first coffee shop I worked at, our roaster would, they would had every barista go through like roasting classes. So we would like spend time with the roaster and he would bring out, 3 or 4 different coffees and kind of go through what he was roasting that day. And I remember I went through probably like 4 or 5 of these, and every time, they'd like hand the cup and they're like, okay, what do you taste? And I'm sitting there and I got my like thoughts in my head, and then the first person will go, yeah, it kind of tastes a little earthy. And I was like, I am so far off base. Like I'm not even in the same universe.
yeah.
And then I remember that one day he brought it around. He's like, oh, we just got in this new Ethiopian. You got to smell it.
Yeah.
And I remember like sticking my head in the thing, and it just was like, blueberry Jolly Rancher.
Yeah.
That's like the quintessential natural Ethiopian. And then everyone goes around, they're like, yeah, it just smells like and tastes like blueberries. And I was
Yes.
like, oh, I think I'm finally starting to get it.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
so
That's like a very that happens. I feel like that's the most told story of people who've gotten into coffee. They're like,
yeah,
I had this Ethiopian natural coffee and I didn't realize coffee could be like that.
exactly.
And here I am. That's
Yeah.
I was the same way. I that or like might have been a double A Kenya that was like pretty dark roasted, but still I remember just be like, this is
insane.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
I forget where we were going from there.
So after processing,
Yes.
So they've there's been probably at this point probably 100 hands picking the coffee in the fields. They bring it through the processing center. They get the green coffee comes out the other side. They bag it up, put it on the plane.
Yeah.
Where
or
does it go
ship.
from there?
Yeah. I mean, it's a ship. It gets put in a container. Yeah. I mean, so from that mill where they're drying it, generally they'll take it to beneficio or like a dry mill of sorts.
Okay.
And that at that point is generally when they'll do the sorting. So those places are set up. More and more now are having these like laser machines. So you like run the green coffee down through there and it like picks out any stones and it like shoots them away with air. It's like it's crazy. Yeah.
Technology is so wild.
Yeah, it is wild. But it's funny. I've seen places that have those machines and they're finicky and they're technology at its best and its worst. And then there's just a row of people sorting it by hand because like we have people need jobs.
Yep. 100%.
That's part of it. That's like, yeah, we can get, if you wanted to start a coffee roasting company and have it fully automated, so it's like one person, you can have an automated roaster, have an automated bagger and grinder and like all of these different things, but then you're just by yourself. It's like takes away that community part. I don't know.
Kind of removes the whole purpose of coffee. Like I feel like for me, whenever I like worked in coffee shops, one of the things that always like, while I was trying my like multiple other careers, the thing that always kept bringing me back is like, I'd be working in like an IT in a, cubicle, and then like 3 months in, I go, but like, where are all the people?
Yeah.
And like, I'm like relatively like networked, like have friends to hang out with, but it just like, it isn't the same as like having those like daily interactions with people. And then like, so, in order to build out like a proper thriving coffee company, like, yeah, you can take the cyborg approach and have your, automated everything from roasting to, pulling the shot of espresso and pouring the milk. But like, does that like continue the purpose of coffee? And I think like that community aspect of it, it's like, that buzzword gets thrown around a lot. But I think like, and the longer we get into this conversation, the more it's kind of that realization, from the farm. It's like, yeah, you can have robots figure out how to go pick stuff off the trees. But like, again, one farmer, like they're not getting into this because they want to just be a solo person on a farm raking in millions.
Yeah.
They like want to be out there with their family, their friends, like doing something they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see like, you guys have been able to do that even here. And, the amount of times that I come in and get to hang out, it's like pretty awesome to see that community flourishing. So I guess like, landing the plane and bringing it home, like what are those like, final steps? It's been sorted.
Yeah.
Gets over into the US.
Yeah. Well, so it's going through that dry mill. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
getting sorted, getting bagged up, put in a container, and get put on a ship. And it'll take, depending where it's coming from, Central America, like 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
East Africa, longer, depending on the routes that are able to be taken at that time. That's the crazy thing too. Like with some stuff that's going on, it's like ships have to get rerouted and whatever.
It's like,
So it comes into the U.S. and like for us, we're a small enough company that we use importers.
Okay.
Generally, those importers have relationships with large warehouses that will offload the container and store it for them. So then basically we're ordering coffee as we need it, a pallet at a time. So it's like 13 to 1,600 pounds of green coffee comes to us, and we will roast it. Generally, we get a new coffee, we'll roast it a bunch of times, different ways, taste it, decide what we want to do with the roast, tweak it, roast it again that way, taste it, get it all dialed in. Which is all also part of that, like, I don't want to call it waste because we try to just give it away, like all of those, what we're not selling. Yeah, exactly. But all of that builds up into the price of it,
Yeah. I mean, that's like R&D, like how much, like on average, how much coffee would you say you go through in like those R&D roasts? Because like I'm sure you can't just roast like a couple cups of coffees worth at a time. Like you have to roast like probably minimum like what, 2 pounds?
Like 8 pounds. Is about where we're at. We have a sample roaster that we can do like 2 cups, like 50 grams, but those roasters never translate into large production roasters.
Yeah.
So like usually when we buy coffees, we'll use the sample roaster to get a small amount and be like, okay, I think this is a coffee that we want, something that we can make taste good on our production roaster.
Yeah.
But we get it in and then we're like, I mean, it varies sometimes and it gets better with having been around longer. We have a backlog of different profiles that we've used for specific coffees. And like often the coffees we're getting are similar to ones we've had in the past. So the dialing in is a little bit less. But it'll definitely be like 3 to 5 batches that we're doing samples of to kind of get it where we want it.
That's crazy. So that's like, you got to go through like 40 pounds of coffee for a brand new coffee to get it like in the ballpark of the cup that people enjoy in the shop.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we have failed ones too, where like we do a larger batch. Well, it does change based on how much coffee you have in the roaster.
Yeah.
So that's all like a learning curve, and sometimes you get it wrong. Then like just recently we had a new Brazilian coffee. We're just like struggling to get it to taste how we thought it did when we sampled it. So I don't even know. We probably went through 8 to 10 batches of that. And some of those were larger ones that like we were using for production, and we tasted them and it was like, something's not quite right yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we went through, I don't know, close to probably 100 pounds, something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. We try to like give that away or, give it to friends or whatever, but it's still,
not bad coffee. It's just like, it's not like hitting that like level that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, that's crazy. Like, it's like there are so many details to this that it's like even I don't fully have that like grasp of.
Yeah.
But that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then that gets to the final cup.
Yeah. So then we're like putting it in bags and shipping it often, which there's another thing is like how many times things get lost in the mail. Or they don't show up on time. Yeah, it's like usually they'll make it eventually. Yeah. But coffee has a shelf life, and we're selling this coffee. If the post office doesn't deliver it, somebody says, "Hey, I didn't get my coffee," like we'll ship them another bag because
Yeah. You're
and
just,
then yeah, it'll show up eventually, but they
yeah.
paid for a fresh roasted product and like
Yeah.
they'll get it. So yeah, stuff like that is odd. So wild.
Yeah. There's a lot that's like in and out of your control in that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But I can't just tell our customer like,
oh,
sorry.
it'll still be fresh when it gets there.
Yeah, like no, it's probably sitting in like a 120-degree van in Arizona or like
yes.
whatever.
It's been very cold here, and I've
Yeah.
gotten packages where I'm like, how long was this actually in your truck?
yeah.
Like, did this get frozen?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Are these batteries all frozen?
Yeah. Yikes.
Which is that good? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
then you waste another 20 to 30 pounds down in an espresso every day.
Yeah. Thankfully not.
Not that.
Thankfully, equipment, espresso technology has come a long ways.
Yes.
So there's a bit of that, but we try to
pretty
use what's
efficient.
in a good range.
Yeah.
It's like we don't there's an attention to detail and there's like over attention to detail that's
Yes.
not necessary.
Yeah.
In my opinion. It can be if that's what you're going for. No disrespect to anyone who's like wanting to make the perfect espresso or roast or whatever. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's just not what we're all about.
Yeah,
I want it to
you
be
get it.
good and serve a window, like a narrow, not even narrow, a wider window than that top tier, whatever.
Yeah. And it also, I mean, it just comes with, 16 years of experience. It doesn't take you quite as long to, get a roast dialed in. So that saves you on, efficiency of green coffee. You have been on bar for a long time, so you don't quite have to, dial in as many shots to get everything dialed in.
Yeah.
You got, great people working. So that like translates down the line.
Definitely.
And yeah, it's coffee is like one of those things that you just like, we all have it in our heads of like, oh yeah, just the, barista that hits the brew button and goes. But, coffee top to bottom is a like skilled industry. And, you can't just, oh, I'm going to go get a job at a coffee shop. Like, great, can work the cash register.
Yeah, right.
But,
yeah.
For people that actually want to like put that intentionality into it, it can be a very rewarding thing from my experience and what it seems like for you.
Yes. And I think there's something to like interacting with people. We keep talking about this, that community. And there's also the aspect of like making something with your hands. This may not relate, but I've noticed recently that if I'm like trying to be productive doing like computer work or whatever, if I put on old music that I listened to when I was like coming up, generally it's like old punk music that I know by heart and it's playing in my head, I can be way more efficient. There's like, it's like activating these things in my head that
That's kind of
can help me dial in
Yeah.
to what I'm doing. And I think it's a similar thing with like making coffee. It's like, if you just go have a conversation with somebody there that you don't know, or that's like coming into your shop or whatever, it can be done, obviously, but there's something about like a barista making coffee while having a conversation. And I don't know if it's that like doing two things at once, or I don't know, maybe it's not related at all, but I think there's something about that. The barista as like a therapist to a lot of people, but it's while making something with your hands, while like something that is, as you get better at it, it's kind of like a muscle memory, can also make you like a better communicator, better part of the community. I don't know. That may not be related at all, but something
I think I know where you're going with that. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll leave you on a random note.
Yeah, I was going to say that was pretty great. I really enjoyed getting to chat. And
yeah, man.
Well,
thanks for having
me.
To
do this more often.
Yeah. Yeah. We should do it again.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Awesome.